Hunter Biden thought he had the upper hand with a joke until Barron Trump took the mic and left everyone speechless. The ballroom at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel was a sight to behold that evening. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, casting a golden glow over the elegantly dressed guests milling about, glasses of champagne in hand. The annual charity gala was in full swing, a gathering of the nation's elite, from politicians and business moguls to celebrities and media icons. Conversations buzzed across the room, blending with the soft strains of a live orchestra playing in the corner. Among the attendees was a figure who had become somewhat of a wild card in the public eye, Hunter Biden. He was in a sharp black tuxedo, already catching attention, not for the outfit, which was perfectly cut, but because of his lively conversations and commanding the room with an unmistakable energy. People chuckled, turned to one another sideways, but the majority were no strangers to the antics of Hunter, as it wasn't the first gala and his reputation predated him. Across the hall stood Barron Trump, youngest member of the Trump family. At just 18, Barron had developed into a giant in every respect, be it physical stature or composure. Wearing a perfectly tailored navy suit, he seemed unruffled, sitting there observing the frenzied crowd that rushed by him. At times, some murmurs could be heard regarding his presence, but he was otherwise discreet, smiling politely to some guests who stopped to talk to him. The event's program was moving along smoothly. Silent auctions, heartfelt speeches, and musical performances peppered the evening. Yet, as the MC announced an impromptu lighthearted segment where select guests could share jokes and anecdotes, a ripple of excitement and trepidation spread through the crowd. It was a tradition meant to break the ice and lighten the atmosphere, but in a room filled with larger-than-life personalities, it always carried the risk of unexpected drama. Hunter Biden took the microphone first. With his signature smirk and confident stride, he made his way to the stage, the spotlight following him. A few scattered cheers erupted, mingled with hesitant applause. Hunter was known to have a quick tongue, and tonight he was especially keen on entertaining. As the microphone crackled in his hand and began speaking, anticipation was palpable in the air. People leaned in, full of curiosity but cautious, trying to guess in which direction the humor would head. And thus, the night took a turn no one would have ever guessed. Hunter began strong, cracking a few harmless jokes about the absurdities of high society and the extravagance of the event. The room chuckled, the kind of polite laughter you'd expect at a formal affair. But soon his tone shifted, taking on a sharper edge. He leaned into the microphone, and his voice came laced with a sly edge. "You know," he started off, scanning the audience, "it's not every day you get to share a room with such towering legacies." The crowd tightened up, wondering where this was going. Take young Barron Trump over there, for example. Heads turned, all eyes were suddenly on Barron, who stood quietly near a table at the back of the room. His expression didn't waver, but the spotlight Hunter had just shone on him was unmistakable. "Kid's got it all, doesn't he?" Hunter continued, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "Tall, handsome, born into one of the most famous families in the world. But I've always wondered." He paused, drawing out the suspense. "What's it like to grow up with a name bigger than your personality?" A hushed silence fell over the room. The joke had landed, but not in the way Hunter might have intended. The audience froze, unsure of whether to laugh or recoil. Some shifted uncomfortable glances. Others held their gaze steadfastly on Barron, hoping for a reaction from him. But Barron did not bat an eyelid. He stood stiffly in his stance, his face impassive, but the electricity in the air was palpable, as if all the air had been siphoned out of the room. Hunter tried to diffuse the tension by forcing a laugh. "Come on, people, it's all in good fun," he said, lifting his glass in mock cheer. But the crowd wasn't laughing. If anything, the room had grown colder. And then Barron moved. Slowly, deliberately, he stepped forward, pushing through the throng of guests with an air of unshakable confidence. The crowd parted for him, instinctively creating a path toward the stage. It was as if the whole gala held its breath, awaiting what would happen next. Barron's steps were measured, his posture impeccable, his face unreadable. The room was frozen in time, every eye fixed on him. For a teenager he was commanding, almost unnerving. Guests whispered to one another, their murmurs carrying a mix of curiosity and unease. Hunter still clutched the microphone as he watched Barron approach with an amused grin, clearly expecting to maintain the upper hand. "Well, this is unexpected," Hunter quipped, his voice dripping with feigned charm. "The young Trump himself graces us with a response." As Barron reached the front of the room, he didn't immediately seize the microphone. Instead, he paused to take up a space in front of them, his tall frame silhouetted against the lights on stage. The silence was almost deafening. He extended his hand, and Hunter handed him the microphone, still a bit flustered in front of so many people, perhaps more than he was letting show. In unison, the room held its collective breath as Barron stepped onto the stage. He scanned the crowd, not hasty, not hesitant, just calmly, deliberately. When he finally did speak, his voice was steady and smooth, albeit surprisingly deep for a teenager. First of all, he began, "Thank you, Mr. Biden, for your generous words." The audience smiled softly, as if appreciating the subtle sarcasm in his tone. He continued, "It's funny you mention legacies and personalities because I've always believed that a legacy is what you leave behind when people forget your name. It's about how you treat others, how you carry yourself, and whether you can look in the mirror at the end of the day and say, 'I did something good.'" The words hung in the air, profound and precise. Hunter's grin slipped a little, his bravado visibly faltering. Barron turned to him, his expression calm but piercing. "And if there's one thing my parents taught me," he said, "it's that your actions speak louder than anything else. So maybe, instead of trying to make people laugh at someone else's expense, we should focus on lifting people up." A ripple of applause broke out, hesitant at first, but it quickly gained momentum. The room was alive now, the tension replaced with something else: admiration, respect, even awe. Barron's composure was magnetic, and the crowd couldn't help but respond. Hunter shifted uncomfortably, clearly caught off guard. Barron wasn't done though. "This bash," he said firmly but politely, "is all about raising dough for causes. It's not about who's got the greatest joke or wants to be a center of attention. So let's refocus on what really matters, shall we?" Applause erupted louder this time. Barron stepped back and relinquished the mic to Hunter. He left without waiting for the response, and walked off stage with his straight posture and unmoved confidence. The room turned around. Barron had given a complete turn in the tables. As Barron returned to his table, energy buzzed within the room, the opposite of that awkward silence just a few moments ago. People looked at one another in stunned amazement, and whispered conversations quickly developed into audible words. He hadn't just held his own. He had found the words to voice a lesson in grace and respect that rang profoundly in the minds of all of those who heard him. To many in the room, Barron Trump had been something of an enigma. He was seen but rarely heard. Yet tonight he shattered expectations. The quiet teenager who had always lived in the shadow of his family's towering reputation had come forward as a voice of reason and maturity. In the back of the room, a clutch of journalists was whispering furiously, taking notes and glancing at Barron. Cameras that had previously been focused on the stage now turned toward his table, capturing his composed demeanor as he sat back down, calmly sipping from his glass of sparkling water. Hunter, still standing on stage, attempted to recover. "Well, folks," he said with a forced chuckle, "I guess I've been put in my place." The joke landed awkwardly, met with a few polite laughs but mostly silence. It was obvious that the audience's hearts had moved. An older woman in a gown of emerald silk sat near the front row, leaning toward her companion. "He didn't just react," she said, her voice dripping with admiration. "He taught us all a lesson." The gala went on, but this was impossible to miss. A change in the air was palpable. The guests were no longer focused on the glitz and glamour. Conversations turned to Barron's words, dissecting his poised response and the wisdom he displayed. Meanwhile, Hunter slipped off the stage, heading for the bar, his earlier confidence noticeably diminished. Barron, on the other hand, remained unfazed. He listened intently to the ongoing speeches, occasionally nodding politely at those who approached his table to congratulate him. There is one of the evening's organizers, a high-profile philanthropist, approaches Barron, smiling. "Young man," she says warmly, "you have a gift for turning a moment into something meaningful. Thanks for reminding us why we are here tonight." Barron smiled faintly at his simple and humble response. "I just said what felt right." The guests knew that was more than enough, because he had already altered the whole tenor of the evening. Before dessert was served, the story of what just transpired was already spreading out into the rest of the ballroom. Guests were texting friends, sharing snippets of Barron's speech, and debating how someone so young could deliver such a profound and composed response. Social media posts began to trickle in, with hashtags like #BarronTrump trending within hours. In one corner of the room, a well-known columnist for a major news outlet was typing furiously on her phone. "This isn't just a gala story," she whispered to a colleague seated beside her. "This is a generational moment. The youngest Trump just put everyone on notice." The night's MC returned to the stage, trying to bring the focus back to the evening's charitable cause, but it was clear the energy in the room had shifted. Barron's reaction had become the event, eclipsing even the celebrity lots and the ceremonial declarations of seven-figure pledges. A few tables over, Hunter Biden sat in silence, his usual good-humored smile muted. He appeared more introspective now, stirring the dregs of his drink and averted the looks of those who might be sizing up his reaction. Whether he felt remorse or was merely surprised, it was impossible to tell. As the evening drew to a close, Barron sat at his table, talking in quiet, measured tones to those who came up to him. Some of them congratulated him on his poise, others just wanted to shake his hand, impressed by the strength of his character. Across the ballroom, a well-dressed couple leaned into each other, whispering animatedly. "He's got a point," one of them said, gesturing subtly toward Barron. "What are we doing with our platforms if not lifting others up? That kid just schooled all of us." By the time the final guests were picking up their coats, Barron's moment had been the lasting image of the night. It wasn't the chandeliers sparkling everywhere, nor even the celebrities wandering around. It was the teenager who had turned a potentially humiliating moment into a profound message about dignity and respect. As Barron and his security detail made their way toward the exit, a young man approached him, visibly nervous. "I just wanted to say," he began, stumbling over his words, "you've really inspired me tonight." "Thank you." Barron paused for a moment, then extended his hand for a firm shake. "I'm glad," he said simply. "We're all capable of making an impact, just start small and keep moving forward." With those words, Barron left the gala, leaving behind not just a memory but a challenge for everyone to reflect on. By the next morning, the events of the gala had become a national talking point. News outlets played the clip of Barron's composed response over and over again. Media outlets used headlines that said he was mature and graceful in his time under the public spotlight. Commentators were discussing what this moment means, not just for the Trump family but for the youth in general. Social media sites filled with comments and opinions. Some people thought he was a good role model for youth, admiring how composed he remained when everyone was staring at him. Others, however, noted the broader lesson in his words, how respect and the understanding for kindness must never be compromised even in the light. As if recalling the steps of leadership, one of the most viral tweets reads, "Last night an 18-year-old showed us all what leadership looks like. It's not about power or privilege. It is about character. Bravo, Barron Trump." The Trump family was even defended by those who had previously criticized it after this episode because of the way Barron conducted himself. Even Hunter Biden kept quiet about the situation. His campaign released no statements to the press. It did not end at the news cycle. The following day, the foundation hosting the gala saw a surge in donations, many with notes citing Barron's words as the inspiration for giving. It was then realized that his speech had not only salvaged the evening but also elevated its purpose, reminding everyone of the true meaning behind their efforts. Discussions of character and leadership were, of course, held in rapt attention around what Barron was doing in the following weeks. Even schools and youth organizations were clipping together snippets from his answer to teach children lessons about respect, composure, and how to use their voice for good. But life for Barron went on. Weeks later, when approached by a reporter with a follow-up question on the moment, he shrugged his shoulders. "I didn't say anything special," he replied humbly. "I just spoke what I believe. And that's where the true lesson lies. It wasn't about making headlines or creating a viral moment. It was about standing firm in your values no matter who's watching." Barron's words remind us all that character isn't built in the big moments. It's revealed there. If you took something meaningful from this story, take a moment to reflect on your own actions. How can you lift someone up today? And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this, stories that challenge us to think, grow, and live better.